All right, everyone. Hello and welcome to episode 3 of the Generation GC podcast. I am your host, Molly Hudelson, and I am talking about the Chronicles of Life and Death with my guest, Scott Waldman, today. Last week, we talked about a song from The Young and the Hopeless. Next week, we'll be talking about something from Good Morning Revival. We're cycling through the albums one at a time, and I'll be sprinkling in some mini episodes too. So, Scott is a good friend of mine. We've done a few interviews, podcasts before. He is an artist manager, he's a musician, and he also has an awesome podcast called Waldman's Words. And I don't just say that because I was a guest last year. It's a great podcast. He has a lot of guests from around the music industry. Scott, hello.
That was a really nice intro.
Oh, thank you.
Obviously, you can't see me, I can't see you, but I was smiling.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Thank you.
So
I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to talk about the title track to my favorite Good Charlotte album. If this isn't your favorite Good Charlotte album, you're wrong.
Oh, well, so to anyone listening, when Scott had me on his podcast, Waldman's Words, I think this was how you opened it, right? Like the first thing you asked me was you had me rank all 7 albums.
Damn right I did.
Yeah, we discussed that. And I will say my ranking sometimes like changes.
Well, you go through life changes.
Yes, exactly,
like
exactly.
Change, so.
Well, and this is something, I mean, we'll get into it more for sure, but like this album for sure, I've grown like a lot more. I think I've like kind of gotten it more as I've gotten older, frankly.
I was about to say that. It's because you got older. I feel that you were more of a youth authority before, and now you're going closer to death than life. So there you go.
Yeah, like, well, I survived the 27 club. I'm 28, so we'll see. Maybe I got a few more years.
I fucking hope so.
I hope so. Okay, so yes, we are talking about the Chronicles of Life and Death, the title track from Good Charlotte's 3rd album, The Chronicles of Life and Death, which came out in October 2004, a couple days before.
Wait, one quick thing. Wouldn't it be awesome if like the band changed their name to the Chronicles of Life and Death, and then it was on MTV as the Chronicles of Life and Death, the Chronicles of Life and Death, Chronicles of Life and Death. God. Like it would say it like 3 times. I'm sorry, I'm a lunatic.
Fun fact that isn't really relevant here, but this album came out a few days before my bat mitzvah.
Wow. Yeah. Since you started your life as an adult in the Jewish community.
Exactly. A lot of symbolism. So the album came out October 2004, but the song was not released as a single with the music video until June of the next year, when they were on the Noise for the World tour with Simple Plan, which is the first time that I saw Good Charlotte on that tour. It charted in a couple places in Europe, Sweden, the UK, Switzerland, Austria. Charted in Australia, but I don't think it was an official single in the US. I don't know. I didn't see data.
I don't think. I thought that, like, honestly, the singles, I'm not looking at Wikipedia. I'm not cheating. But I think Predictable was a single.
Yes.
And I Just Wanna Live. But that single did nothing in the States. But globally, it's one of their biggest songs, which is weird.
Which one? Chronicles?
I Just Want to Live. I just want to live. Like here, it's like it failed at radio, but in Europe, it was actually like a legit hit.
Yeah, it's funny to me. I mean, especially as like, well, as we get into like Good Charlotte's later albums of like how much they maintained momentum and like radio popularity in other countries that they just like didn't have in the States.
Do you want me to answer that, or it's not even a question? Americans aren't loyal, and in Europe, I mean, sadly, Slam Dunk was just postponed. But bands like Sum 41, Simple Plan, Good Charlotte, like Newfound Glory, like a lot of those bands that kind of came and went. Like, yes, there's still some loyal fans, but you're never going to see Good Charlotte headlining a venue like the Forum here ever again. Right. Maybe as direct support. But in Japan or in Europe or in places like that, they are major headliners still, and I appreciate that.
Here's my question. I don't know if you know this, but like, you know, I feel like
I know everything. I have a radio show.
A lot of people in the US, I mean, there's all these like bands like, you know, not just Good Charlotte, but Blink and Green Day and Yellow Card. I mean, all of the kind of like early 2000s pop punk bands. I feel like people will still go to their shows, but they're like, I don't want to hear the new stuff. Maybe Yellow Card wasn't the best example because Yellow Card broke up a few years ago. But, you know, people go see Taking Back Sunday, and Taking Back Sunday sells out 2 nights at Starland Ballroom every Christmas. But I don't know if people are like really
play something from Happiness, guys. We need to hear more Happiness. No, it's kind of like that with every band. I mean, because obviously I'm a little bit older than you, so yes. I'm 39. And the first time I saw Good Charlotte was actually they were direct support for MXPX. Oof. And it was on the self-help. Well, remember, I'm old. You were like breastfeeding. And it was
year
complicated.
Was this?
That was, I believe, in 2000, I'm guessing 2001 or 2000.
I was 2001. I was like 9-10 years old.
Shut up. All right, anyway, no, let me see right now. Good Charlotte, because Ultimate Fake Book, shout out to them, because they're really great, and no one really cared about them, and I liked it. But I'm looking this up right now. Good Charlotte, Ultimate Fake Book, MXPX Long Island. I know I was a college student, and I believe I was like around a sophomore in college, but I'm looking this up, and 100% this was before Young and Hopeless. Because if this was after Young and Hopeless, MXPX would have been opening.
Yeah.
Looking it up. Dagnabbit. Let's see. You could be entertaining while I look this up. Oh, 2001.
2001. Okay. Yes. So they were probably like fresh off the first album.
Yep. And this is like really, and I don't know if you realize this, they had a show on MTV2.
Oh,
not MTV2, but MTV1.
Yeah.
And it was great.
Yeah. Okay, so Chronicles. So this is Chronicles of Life and Death is the second song on the album, follows the intro track, Once Upon a Time, the Battle of Life and Death. And
the Tim Burton-esque track.
Yes. Scott, when I mentioned this podcast to you, this was a song that you named that you said you wanted to talk about. Why did you want to talk about this song in particular?
Because I think that this album doesn't get enough love. I mean, just as we were talking about like a few minutes ago, Good Charlotte, I think if they had released Good Morning Revival immediately after, they might be as big as Blink is today in the States. But they released this album, which was a real departure, and people got alienated. I feel like this is the Billy Martin album.
Oh yeah, no, this is the phrase that just came to mind was that this is Goth Charlotte.
I think that's fair. I'd say it's mature Charlotte too. Like I mean, the Chronicles of Life and Death, it's a pretty heavy song without distortion. Like it's really not like I don't know if you I can't say I don't know if you recall because this is Good Charlotte. You know everything about that. But track 1 on Young and Hopeless, like while it is, you know, very orchestral, it's still really heavy.
Oh, it's so punk. Yeah, A New Beginning. I'm excited to eventually do an episode about that track because it's so I don't know.
You should do an instrumental episode about it. You guys shouldn't even talk.
right. Just like playing code. No, but I read like I was just reading some reviews of this record earlier, and I feel like this is the record where people kind of split off, right? Like, if you stuck with Good Charlotte through the Chronicles of Life and Death, like you're probably still a fan today. But if
people
you didn't
tapered off,
if you didn't get into it, you probably didn't get into the later stuff. But I feel like this title track, I don't know, it feels like an overture to me. Like
overture to a birth.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and exactly. And that's kind of what the song is about, right? Like these are the chronicles of life and death and everything between. It opens with this heart rate monitor that's like beeping in rhythm with the song and then ends with the monitor going off.
Don't you think that like this song really, I mean, I don't know, like you could argue that it's a concept album or you may not. It's definitely flows through it. And I think concept album gets thrown around quite a bit. But I feel like this is like a really great song. Like if Good Charlotte had a musical, this would be the opening number.
See, I always believed that Good Morning Revival could be a musical.
Good morning.
Good Morning Revival, I think. And I've actually had like a lot of thoughts about like how Good Morning Revival would be a musical. But no, I could see that too. And I feel like, I mean, they've never like stuck in one place musically, but I feel like this album, you have them going all over the place from something like Walk Away that's like very heavy to predictable to I Just Want to Live, where Joel is just going all falsetto to
I just wanna. That's their Justin Timberlake song, man. Like that song was like, I think it came out like when he was the biggest, I mean, he still is one of the biggest artists in the world. He doesn't have to even release music for 10 years, but like it was definitely their like pop R&B-ish song. And I loved it. I still do, but I think Chronicles is awesome.
No, I think Chronicles is awesome, and I feel like, because this is something I've noticed and picked up on as I've like read interviews a little more recently, but they're kind of snarky almost in the way they talk about it, right? Like these are the chronicles of life and death. Oh, and everything between. Duh.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm a pretty cynical human, but I don't look at that as, I don't look at, same girl, but I don't look at that as like them being obnoxious. I just think that they're being specific.
No, I don't think it's obnoxious, but
they're just telling you what you're in for, man, because I mean, granted, this is long before cancel culture.
Yeah.
But like when that song came out, like I don't think that like someone would be like, you're talking about stuff in between life and death, so I'd appreciate if you reference that too.
Yeah, I do wonder, like I think about, because this album came out, I don't think I had MySpace yet. Like MySpace existed, but this album came out, it was like the beginning of 8th grade. I didn't get MySpace until like the spring of 8th grade.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
In 8th grade, I didn't have freaking like an email address.
Oh my God. Email
in 8th grade, back in 1994.
Right.
These were different. I was chronicling death.
No, but I do wonder like how responses to things would have been different if social media, if like different social media methods were kind of used at the time.
Oh, this album would have pissed off all their freaking hardcore fans right away, and it would have been shit on, and they wouldn't have even gotten to a second single if social media had it happen.
Yeah.
I honestly think that.
Reading the reviews of this record are interesting because some of them, like the one that I just read was written by someone that was a Good Charlotte fan, but their comments were just like, the transition from the intro to the title track just doesn't make sense, and I Just Want to Live is one of the worst songs ever written. And I was like, what? I don't know. I get that this album is divisive, and I think this one and Good Morning Revival were like super divisive. Like you either loved it or you just like hated it and didn't get it.
But Good Morning Revival still had like, I don't know, I feel that would have bridged the gap to Chronicles of Life and Death. Like I feel that if it came out before it, Chronicles might have made a little bit more sense, but Chronicles was just so left field, and the band was even quoted as saying that this album was like their album for them. And I don't know, like, I mean, yes, Good Morning Revival does have stuff all over the map too, but I don't know, like The River is definitely more quote unquote Good Charlotte than Predictable, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. And I mean, I feel like this is the album where people started to kind of question like what is Good Charlotte in a way.
I wake up every day and I ask myself that same question.
It's funny to me, like, I mean, this was the first album that I bought of theirs when I was, like, the first new album when I was a fan. Because I bought The Young and the Hopeless a few months after it came out. And then a couple months later, I found out, I was like, oh, they have another CD. So I bought the self-titled.
Can you do that voice again? Oh, I have another CD.
I have another CD.
Get off my lawn.
No, but this was the first one where I was, like, looking forward to it. And this was, like, the first CD where this was really the first album where it was, like, a new release that I was, like, actively looking forward to. And
that was, I mean, because I was not in the know about Good Charlotte until, and this is not even a joke, until, like, Little Things. I believe one of my guitar students at the time asked me to teach it to him. Because, really? Like, I was, at that point, I think if it was 2001, I was 20 years old. So, like, the term mall punk, I would have been like, fuck that. Like, yeah. I'm not 14. But I don't know, someone played me Little Things. I'm like, holy shit, this is really good. And then I found out it was produced by Don Gilmore, and I listened to the album, and I was just like, this is just really good pop rock. Like, whatever you want to call it, it's just good songs. So I bought Young and the Hopeless when it came out, and I worked at an eyeglass store, and I used to play it all the time there. That's my story.
I love that. So when you first heard this song or this record for the first time, like, what did you think when you first heard it?
I'll tell you this. I mean, Weezer's Pinkerton, when I first heard it, I was 15, and that was kind of a departure from the Blue Album, and I hated it. And then for some reason, I just gave it another spin, and now it's in my top 10 of all time. This album immediately got me. I immediately loved it. And maybe I could attribute it to the fact that, like, when did it come out? 2004?
2004, October 5th, 2004.
Okay, so I was in LA at that point for a year and a month. Okay. And I mean, Silverchair is still my favorite live band, but I don't know, like, I was just like, I was ready for something a little bit more orchestral and grown up.
Yeah.
And I was just not, when I heard it immediately, I just loved it. And it became my favorite album of theirs right away. And it still is, even though, like, you know, Generation RX is kind of going back towards that a little bit. But I don't know. I just think that this one is better.
I liked this album a lot. I mean, like, when I heard this
album,
album,
were you?
I was 13. I was newly bat mitzvahed. My bat mitzvah rehearsal was the day that this album came out. I was 13, and I would, like, this was, because I guess this would have been, like, right before American Idiot came out. Because I want to say that was around the same time. But, like, this was kind of the first time I'd heard a record that sort of talked about life and death and all these, like, dramatic things. But, I mean, like I said, as I've been looking at it more recently, I feel like I've, like, kind of grasped it more. But it felt like I could still get it, you know?
I mean, that's awesome that at your age, at that time, it was still your thing, because pretty much every review I read of the album lambasted it. And a lot of people that I knew that really liked them, they were not feeling it. And I felt really alone in it. And I still do.
Yeah. I mean, it was like a weird time for me, because I feel like this was when I was sort of, like, discovering the internet too. So I was, like, discovering fan websites and all that, and, like, even seeing, like, what fans said about it. It was, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of weird to say now, because now anyone who is, like, a Good Charlotte fan in 2020, I feel like likes their whole catalog. But at that time, like, that album came out, and I don't know if people, I mean, it was a departure, right? Like,
by definition.
Yeah.
It was a departure. I mean, it could have been a completely different band.
Yeah. But I felt like they had, I mean, going back to what I said about them being, like, slightly snarky, like, maybe that's, I feel like snarky is like a negative word, but there's one line in this song that like sticks with me as like still one of my favorite just lines they've ever said. They say, money talks in this world, that's what idiots will say, but you'll find out that this world is just an idiot's parade. And I remember
clever.
Yeah, like that's so clever. And like I remember when I first heard that, I was like, oh shit.
Oh my God, they showed you.
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, damn, I don't know.
It's the same word, but it has a different meaning. And then they pluralize it. Holy fuck.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I feel like I don't know if I want to say underrated, because I don't think this is like necessarily like an underrated song or album, but I feel like misunderstood.
I mean, the number one thing I learned as an English major at the University of Michigan is that we don't know the author's intention. So I'm not going to say whether it's misunderstood or not. I'm going to 100% say it's underrated. I think that everyone who's a good Charlotte fan, everyone obviously, let's just say 95%, would say Young and Hopeless is their best record. And then the majority of people will probably say Self-Titled is their second best. No one ever puts this album in their like top 3 or 4. No one.
Yeah.
I mean, I would love to be wrong.
I'm like trying to remember, because I know Young and the Hopeless was my number 1, but I think Youth Authority was my number 2.
Right, but I feel that Youth Authority is very, very like similar to Young that kind of straight up pop rock, pop punk,
totally
Young and Hopeless stuff. So that would make more sense. But like I can tell you that I feel that with the exception of Cardiology, this album is the one that people dislike the most.
I feel like Cardiology is kind of the forgotten one, though.
But we need our hearts.
Yes, we need our hearts. I'm excited to get into some episodes. I'm doing a Cardiology episode tomorrow. I'm recording one. So I'm very excited about that.
Don't die.
I will try. Let's talk about this music video. Scott, you said that this is the Billy Martin album. This album, wait, before we get into the music video, so the Chronicles of Life and Death had 2 versions, the Life version and the Death version. Life had Falling Away as the bonus track, and then you got Wounded, and Death had Meet My Maker and also Wounded, and Death had this like aged version of the cover art. Which version did you have?
Well, I actually had the Life version because I'm very positive. Falling Away.
I had the Life version. I think the Life version was like easier to find in stores. But I had
more positive.
I had the live version, and then as soon as I like got, because this album came out, and then for my bat mitzvah, I got my first iPod and an iTunes gift card. And the first thing I did with that iTunes gift card was I bought the Death version so I could have Meet My Maker too.
Look at you.
Look at me.
You met your maker at your bat mitzvah. Like that's the most religious thing that's been said on this show.
God. Oh my gosh. Okay,
yes, God. God, Charlotte.
Well, here's a fact that will probably get talked about more in a different episode, but my bat mitzvah was October 9th, which is mentioned in the song Walk By. Egos fly as she walks by. She caught my eye on October 9th.
Okay.
In Walk By from the first album.
No, I know. Yeah. That's pretty amazing. You were referenced. I can tell you the one thing about my birth month is that every day is a command. March 1st, March 2nd, March 3rd. But you would have laughed if you really loved it. Yay! All right.
Okay, so let's talk about this music video. It's primarily animated, drawn by Billy Martin, who also did the album artwork. Opens up with a guy who's on his deathbed in the hospital, and basically watching the playback of his whole life from the moment he was born and, you know, and through everything, like through working and falling in love and going to war. Like, it's intense. And then you also see Good Charlotte.
Like Benjamin Button, right?
Yeah. No, Benjamin Button is where he ages in reverse.
No, I know. I was making a bad joke. Anyway, sorry.
So you also see Good Charlotte perform, and I noted that this is when Joel Madden was wearing all white. So, like, the entire band is
take a look at my car, all white.
Yeah, right? Well, everyone else in the band in this video, and at that time, was wearing pretty much all black. Benji had 3 lip rings at that point. Billy Martin
for the third album
had bats everywhere.
Okay.
And then Joel is wearing all white. I remember I couldn't find the exact interview because I think this might have actually been in a magazine, like printed, but there was some interview that, because this was like a thing for like several months or maybe close to a year, where Joel Madden wore all white all the time. And
AFI did that too. I remember seeing them at a Warped Tour where all 4 of them were all white. And I was thinking, my God, you guys are adventurous. It's Warped Tour. You're going to get your clothes ruined.
Right. Well, Joel said something, and I'm obviously paraphrasing because this is something I read like over a decade ago, but Joel said something along the lines of how it was to like counter darkness, or it was like not being sad anymore and he's in a better place, I guess. I don't remember exactly, but also I would say that AFI is smart to wear white on Warped Tour because they wouldn't get as hot.
That is true, but
you can just bleach it. You can just bleach it.
You know what? You're right. I'm wrong. This is your show. Yeah. I stand corrected. They're the smartest band of all time. Hi, Hunter.
I've never seen AFI, but I did see Dream Car. That was Davey Havok's. I don't know if they're still doing anything, but it was like 3 years ago. They did a tour, and it was good. They were great. I heard part of an AFI set at Riot Fest, but I didn't actually get to watch because I was like in my tent. But I heard them play Miss Murder at Riot Fest. Cool. 2013. Yeah.
AFI is great live. Dream Car was awesome. It was very 80s, but they were one and done with their record.
That's kind of what I figured, yeah.
Yep. It was not a dream car.
No, they were fun though. So what do you think of this music video? Scott, what are your thoughts on this music video?
I mean, I honestly hadn't seen it until you told me about it. I didn't even know that they had one for it. Yeah, I didn't realize that this song had a video at all. Like, I really thought it was pretty much just predictable and I Just Want to Live, and the album kind of didn't do well, so that they wouldn't even have the budget for it. So I obviously am a fan, but to me, I think it's more about the album as a whole than this actual song and this video. And I can't think of an album of theirs that has as much repeat value for me as this one straight through. I just think it's just so diverse. I think the songs really blend well into each other. And I think it really feels like Chronicles. Yeah,
it does feel like Chronicles. I mean, I will say that, like, I remember when this music video came out, but it was like, you know, it was kind of a quieter release than some of the other music videos and singles from this album. And it was like, I want to say I saw it like on their website or their newsletter or whatever, because this was definitely before Twitter. Definitely. It was well before Facebook. So, I mean, MySpace or like their email newsletter or something, I probably heard about it. But this definitely, I'm pretty sure this was not ever played on MTV or anything. And this was like even, you know, a year or two before YouTube. So it was like you had to actually go to their website to watch it.
Yeah, I mean, it was basically, you had to kind of be in the know. And I guess I was just not connected to their internet stuff. I just like their music. I was more of a brick and mortar Good Charlotte guy,
right,
than all that. And also I was older and I was in a band and I had a job at the time, but I still rock the hell out to that album. And I remember even rocking out to it on tour with the City Drive all the time and just really liking it. And everyone else in the band being like, dude, this shit sucks.
Yeah.
I'm like, fuck you.
I mean, I played this album a lot at home. Like I said, I was 13 when it came out. But I played this a lot at home. My dad is actually going to be the guest for a different song on this album. I'm not going to say what song yet. I'll tell you after we get off. I don't want to put it in the episode. Yeah. Because he heard it so much. So my dad knows. My dad is the one that took me to see the Noise to the World tour with Civil Plan.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, my dad took me and my friend, and I was just like completely flashing back to that night. So I was getting ready for this episode, like, holy shit, like getting there and just being in this giant crowd and like being 5'3", and I couldn't, I had to like stand on my tiptoes, and then it started raining, but it was like the coolest thing. So, Scott, how has this song, I mean, you talked about playing this record a lot when you were, on tour with the City Drive and everything, but like, how has this song and this record, I guess, held up for you over time?
I think that this is their least dated sounding album.
Okay.
Because it didn't really follow a trend. Like, when you listen to like a Drive-Thru Records album, you're like, dude, that's 2002.
Right.
You listen to it and you're transported to a time and place. Mm-hmm. When you listen to Green Day's Dookie or Offspring Smash, you're like 94. Yeah. When you listen to this album, I don't go 2004 because it's not like there were a lot of bands that were copycatting this in 2004. Yeah. I just go, good album.
Yeah,
fucking brilliant, man.
Brilliant. No, that's a good point. And I read one of the reviews I read of this record like recently mentioned like all the different bands or all the different songs on the album. They were like, oh yeah, this song sounds like this band and this song sounds like this band. And I was like, yeah, sort of, but the record as a whole, I don't feel like anyone was really doing what they were doing.
No one was doing this. No one was doing it, and maybe no one did it afterwards because it tanked.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to say they were ahead of their time because it didn't dictate the future. Like, right. I mean, when people talk about, like, Refused, like, they're like, shit, like, if that album came out a few years later, like, they would be headlining, like, major venues. But with this album, it's not that they're ahead of their time. It's just a really good album. Yeah,
it's a great album. And I feel like, exactly, no one was doing that exact thing, but I'm super excited to eventually talk about like the deep cuts on this album, the songs that weren't singles, because there are a lot of, I don't know, really interesting songs here.
I use the word interesting to describe an ugly painting, but I will agree with you.
No, interesting, like lots that can be said about them that aren't necessarily super straightforward. And I mean, like I was saying before, being 28 now versus 13 when this record came out, I've obviously developed a lot emotionally, personally, and such. And so I can kind of appreciate a lot more of it. But I also still feel like I have a lot of excitement about, being 13 and hearing this and going, holy shit, this is so profound. This is so cool. I've never heard anything like this before. And how much that impacted me.
I mean, that's awesome. I've never really spoken with someone with this big of an age gap about this album, but I mean, I don't associate this album with anything but quality. Like, it's not like this album brings me to that time in the van with the City Drive, or when I bought it at probably Universal City Walk, Mm-hmm. It just, actually, what's crazy is this album was actually given to me by a City Drive fan.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like the worst thing that people can give bands is food, because you don't know what they put in the ingredients. Right. But right. If they give you like Best Buy gift cards or like things you want, it's dope. Mm. But like when I feel that when I listen to Good Charlotte's self-titled album, which for some reason is not on a lot of streaming platforms, or Young and Hopeless. Like, yeah, when I hear Young and Hopeless, I think about working in an eyeglass store.
You think about like
college.
That time.
And I think about, with the self-titled album, I think about working in a sleepaway camp, and just like I associate that more with college. This I don't associate with LA or growing up. I just was, maybe it's because I've listened to it so consistently. I don't know.
I feel like the Which album.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I don't know, because I remember so clearly like when this album came out. So it's like, in a sense, I kind of associate it with being 13, because this was the first album I ever was like looking forward to, right? Ever.
Because you're the perfect age. I didn't start getting albums on my own until like I was in like 7th, 8th grade. I mean, all before that, they were pretty much gifted. And then at that point, that's when you kind of seek stuff out.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, this was like, I knew like a couple of Yellow Card songs. I knew a couple Simple Plan songs, but I don't think I was even like into Simple Plan by this point. This was, this came out right before my bat mitzvah, and then I got that iTunes gift card for my bat mitzvah, and I probably bought like Ocean Avenue, and I definitely bought American Idiot with that gift card when that came out.
I mean, that's a fucking powerhouse gift card.
Yeah.
You just bought some really quality records. But let's just go back to, like Green Day's American Idiot, to me, like that kind of flipped between Dookie as my like favorite Green Day album, but I really associate that with the Bush presidency, and to like that, and Ocean Avenue, I totally associate. I'm not going to drop this topic. Ocean Avenue, I totally associate with, I just moved to LA and this is like total California. This album, I just don't. I just think it's fucking good.
Well, I mean, if we talk about American Idiot, like that was like very much about, like the Bush administration. But yeah, this album I don't think is, I mean, as much as there are tracks on this album like The World is Black and In This World and We Believe, that, kind of talk about current events, it's done in a way that it doesn't place itself in a certain time.
That's true. And I don't know if you realize this, but Anti-Flag released 2020 Vision this year, and that was their very, very first time that they wanted a timestamp on an album.
Oh, wow.
Where they literally made it deliberately, like before it could have been, about Bush or about, Obama or about Clinton or about whomever.
Right. And they were like, no,
pure Trump, pure Pence. Pure
wow. That's awesome.
And American Idiot is clearly about Bush, but they never like mention his name.
Right. No, they never mentioned his name. I mean, I don't know. I maybe I need to do at some point an American Idiot revisit, because that was the first like super political thing I think I'd ever heard. And I just remember being like, this is so cool.
I mean, that's awesome. I mean, that's what the power of music. I'd say like the first time I was ever really exposed to music politically is because my mom went to frickin' Woodstock. And like I grew up in a house where folk music was played a lot, but I'd say like watching Forrest Gump was what really exposed me to a lot of political music.
Oh, really?
Anyway, yeah, I mean, Fortunate Son.
Okay.
Like all the songs like that. Are you familiar with it? Like, it ain't me.
I had a guitar class where we learned to play Fortunate Son.
Look at that.
But like that was my introduction to Fortunate Son, I think. Was like taking that guitar class, and the teacher was like, all right, we're gonna learn this.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's a fucking sick, smart song.
It is. So, Scott, I wanted to ask, what has Good Charlotte meant to you over the years, and how has that changed?
I mean, would I say that Good Charlotte is in my top 10 favorite bands of all time? No. But I've never given up on them, even when Cardiology came out. Like there's some, like I just remember hearing that record and being like, yeah, that could have been EP. Like it should have been just like the first like 5 or 6.
So Scott, what has Good Charlotte meant to you over the years, and how has that changed?
Good Charlotte has just been a band that I thoroughly enjoyed every single one of their albums, including Cardiology, though I think that Cardiology could have been an EP with the first like 4 or 5 songs on it. But like there's some bands that release an album and I'm just like, you know what? I'm good. I don't need to hear anymore. But I just really feel that they just consistently write really, really good songs. I really like them. Every interaction I've had with them in person has been pleasant.
Yeah.
I literally have a radio show on Idobi, which is partly owned by the Maddens, you know, and I just think that they're just a really good band. They're great live. I think they're really underrated live. They're really tight. They know their crowd. They have really good charisma and presence. I feel like, because we're a similar age. I know the Madden brothers are just like a year or two older than I am.
Yeah, so March 1979.
See, well, then they're literally 2 years older than me. March what?
March 11th.
Okay. So March 12th was my bar mitzvah, so they just missed that.
Wow.
This is enough bar mitzvah talks. But so they're just under 2 years older than I am. They're just older. But I feel that we grew up in the same time. We have similar interests and influences. I don't know. I just like them. And I like that they're managers now. I've always liked their band.
Awesome. So do you have any last words about the Chronicles of Life and Death, about Good Charlotte, or about yourself?
Not a predictable listen.
Ha! Excellent.
About
Scott,
me? I'm a Molly fan. Molly's a good writer. I support the shit out of any podcast she's a part of. Follow all of her socials. Read everything she writes. Buy her book.
Yes, my book. There's something about Good Charlotte in the book.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
What, did I do okay?
Yes, you did awesome.
Good.
Scott, so where can people follow you or find you on the internet?
On Facebook, it's just my name, Scott Waldman. On Instagram, it is my full name, Scott Lewis Waldman. On Twitter, it's Lido Beach, LIDO BEACH. Waldman's Words is on Idobi Radio. You can stream every single episode for free. And most importantly, you can check out my website, waldmgmt.com, to see the various acts I have that are somewhat contemporaries of Good Charlotte.
That may or may not be guests on this show at some point.
Woo!
Scott,
I don't know about that.
Scott, thank you so much. To anyone listening, you can follow Generation GC on Twitter or Instagram. We are at Generation GC Pod, POD, on both Twitter and Instagram. You can also follow me at M Hudelson, MHUDELSON, on both Twitter and Instagram. Thank you so much for listening, everyone, and we will talk to you next week with an episode about Good Morning Revival.